Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that someone is not just thinking about you? Someone is carrying you in their mind like a secret they cannot confess, like a fire they cannot put out, like a memory they cannot bury, no matter how hard they try. What if I told you that the reason they cannot let you go is not because you begged them to stay, not because you chased them, not because you forced your way into their heart, but because you did something far more powerful than that? You awakened them. You touched a part of their soul that had been sleeping for years. And now they are not in ordinary love. They are in the kind of love that makes people stare at their phone in silence, reread old messages, remember your voice in the middle of the night, and feel their chest tighten when your name appears out of nowhere. They are in the kind of love that does not behave politely. It does not knock softly. It breaks down the door, enters the mind, and refuses to leave. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Jung taught us that the human heart is never as simple as it looks on the surface. What we call attraction is often deeper than attraction. What we call chemistry is often a mirror. What we call love is often a hidden meeting between the person in front of us and the unseen world inside us. Sometimes people do not fall in love with what you are. They fall in love with what you activate in them. And that is why this message is so important. Because when someone becomes crazy in love with you, there is always a reason. There is always a moment. There is always a spark that changed everything. And most people never realize what they did. They think it was luck. They think it was timing. They think the other person just caught feelings. But the truth is much deeper. You may have looked at them in a way no one else ever did. You may have listened when everyone else dismissed them. You may have smiled with a softness they had never been shown. You may have walked away at the exact moment they expected you to stay. You may have stayed calm when they were used to chaos. You may have been honest when others were only pretending. You may have carried a quiet strength that made them feel both safe and exposed. And without even knowing it, you became the person their unconscious had been waiting for. That is the mystery Carl Jung would want us to understand. The unconscious does not fall in love the way the ego does. The ego chooses based on logic, convenience, status, and appearance. But the unconscious chooses based on recognition. It says, I know this. I have seen this before. This person is showing me something about myself. So, when someone is crazy in love with you, the deeper question is not, why are they so attached? The deeper question is, what did I awaken in them? Because maybe you were not just kind. Maybe you reminded them of the love they never received. Maybe you were not just confident. Maybe you reminded them of the version of themselves they lost. Maybe you were not just distant. Maybe your distance made them chase the feeling of earning what they never had to earn before. Maybe you were not just beautiful. Maybe you embodied a kind of energy their soul instantly recognized. And once that recognition happens, everything changes. People do not always become obsessed because the other person is perfect. Sometimes they become obsessed because that person is unfinished in their mind. Because that person opened a door in them, and now every closed door feels smaller than before. Because that person became a symbol, and symbols are stronger than facts. Listen closely, because this is where many hearts are misled. When someone cannot stop thinking about you, it does not always mean they are healthy. Sometimes it means they are deeply moved. Sometimes it means they are emotionally awakened. Sometimes it means they have finally encountered a feeling strong enough to break their usual patterns. But sometimes it also means they are projecting. They are seeing in you everything they secretly want, everything they secretly fear, and everything they secretly miss in themselves. Carl Jung called this projection. We place our inner images onto someone else. We take the unresolved parts of our soul and we dress another person in them. We say, this is the one. But often what we are really saying is, this person is carrying the image my inner world has been waiting to meet. That is why this kind of love can be so intense. It is not just two people. It is two minds, two wounds, two histories, and two invisible worlds colliding. And now let me say something that many people are afraid to hear. Sometimes the reason someone loves you this deeply is because you made them feel something they have never felt before, and now they are addicted to the feeling, not addicted to your body alone, not addicted to your attention alone, not addicted to the idea of you alone, addicted to the version of themselves they became around you. Think about that. Maybe around you they felt calmer. Maybe around you they felt more alive. Maybe around you they felt seen. Maybe around you they felt challenged. Maybe around you they felt soft when they had been hard for years. Maybe around you they felt masculine, feminine, secure, vulnerable, desired, valued, or understood. That feeling becomes powerful, and when a human being finds a feeling that fills an emotional emptiness, they do not forget it easily. They begin to return to it in thought, in fantasy, in memory, in longing. They start searching for your presence even when you are not there. They begin to compare every new person to you. They begin to realize that what they thought was ordinary life before you was actually emotional hunger. This is why people say, "I cannot explain it," because logic has a hard time explaining soul-level recognition. You may have done something small, something ordinary, a single conversation, a calm response, a moment of kindness, a moment of silence, a glance, a joke, a refusal, a boundary, a shared laugh, a message sent at the right time, a goodbye that lasted too long, and that one moment became the seed of a deeper emotional storm. Ladies and gentlemen, a single action can echo for years inside a person who was ready to be transformed by it. That is why the title of this message matters so much. Someone is crazy in love with you, and it is because you did this. What is this? Maybe this was the way you made them feel important without humiliating them. Maybe this was the way you never begged for their approval. Maybe this was the way you carried dignity when others were desperate. Maybe this was the way you showed them a love that felt rare, and then you withdrew just enough to make them realize its value. Maybe this was the way you reflected their shadow back to them, their fear, their insecurity, their hidden hunger, their need to be chosen, their need to be healed, their need to be seen. And once they saw themselves through you, you were no longer just a person. You became a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous in love, because people do not only desire what they see, they desire what they discover in themselves through what they see. Jung believed that every person carries an inner opposite, a hidden counterpart, something we often project outward. This is why some connections feel almost fated. This is why some people say, "I met them, and it felt like I had known them before." It is not always destiny in the romantic movie sense. Sometimes it is the psyche recognizing a pattern. Sometimes the soul feels familiar because the unconscious has found a shape for its longing. So when someone is crazy in love with you, do not look only at their behavior. Look at the emotional story underneath it. They might not just be in love with your face. They may be in love with the peace you gave them. They might not just be in love with your words. They may be in love with the way you made them feel understood. They might not just be in love with your charm. They may be in love with the fact that you did not perform. You were real. And in a world full of performance, authenticity can feel like a miracle. That is why genuine people often become unforgettable. Not because they try to be unforgettable, but because they are rare enough to leave an imprint. Some people enter lives like thunder, others enter like light. Thunder shocks you, but light stays with you. And often, the one who remains in the mind is not the loudest one. It is the one who quietly changed the atmosphere. Now let us go deeper. There is something almost terrifying about a love that grows in silence. Because when people cannot express what they feel, the feeling does not disappear. It grows inward. It becomes heavier in the imagination. It becomes louder in the absence of expression. The mind starts building entire worlds around one person. A single memory becomes a movie. A moment becomes a fantasy. A glance becomes a promise. An unanswered message becomes a wound. This is why some people seem obsessed after very little contact. It is not always about quantity. It is about impact. One moment can open the door. One look can start the obsession. One act can awaken the chase. One boundary can create longing. One absence can create hunger. And once hunger begins, the mind does strange things. It revisits. It rewinds. It questions. It idealizes. It imagines. It compares. It hopes. It suffers. It tries to understand. And the more it tries to understand, the more powerful the feeling becomes. This is where Carl Jung's wisdom becomes so relevant. He would not simply ask, "Who is this person loving?" He would ask, "What archetype are they meeting through this person? What part of the self is being activated? What unconscious need is being touched?" Because often we do not just love people. We love the image they awaken in us. The rescuer, the lover, the muse, the wounded child, the divine feminine, the divine masculine, the forbidden one, the safe one, the lost one, the one who came back to life, the one who made the heart beat again. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the person who loves you crazily is also the person who does not know how to love calmly. They know intensity. They know longing. They know possession. They know fantasy. They know the ache. They know the wanting. But they may not know how to hold love gently. That is why you must be careful. Because being deeply desired is not the same as being deeply understood. Being idolized is not the same as being loved well. Being chased is not the same as being cherished. And being remembered is not the same as being respected. Still, we cannot deny the power of the human heart when it is stirred. Once that spark ignites, it can turn into a storm. The person begins to notice everything about you. Your timing, your tone, your habits, your pauses, your moods, your energy, your absence, your presence, your small changes. They become hyper-aware. They start reading into details. They begin to feel connected even when they are not near you. And all of this can happen because of one thing. You did something that hit the soul. Maybe you made them feel chosen. Maybe you made them feel seen without being interrogated. Maybe you made them feel safe enough to be honest. Maybe you made them feel desired without being objectified. Maybe you made them feel a version of love that was calm, rare, and mature. Or maybe, and this is important, you made them feel something they were not prepared to lose. That is when attachment turns into obsession. That is when admiration turns into fixation. That is when attraction turns into haunting. And that is why some people cannot move on. Not because they are weak, but because something in them has attached itself to the experience of you. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever noticed how a person can look perfectly fine on the outside, while their inner world is falling apart because of one human being? They smile in public, but in private they replay your words. They stay busy, but in their silence they think of you. They act indifferent, but their mind keeps returning to the same place. They try to move on, but every new connection feels flat because it cannot reproduce the same emotional voltage. That is what happens when someone has experienced emotional imprinting. You became an imprint. You became a reference point. You became the standard. You became the person they compare everyone else to. And that is powerful, but it is also dangerous. Because once you become the standard, ordinary things no longer satisfy them. Their heart becomes restless. Their imagination becomes active. Their emotions become divided. They want closure, but they also want more. They want peace, but they also want the feeling you gave them. They want to let go, but they cannot stop reaching back in their mind. That is why this message is urgent. Because if someone is crazy in love with you, you are standing at the edge of an emotional truth. You are dealing with a heart that has crossed a threshold. And once that threshold is crossed, the energy changes. Everything you do matters now. Every reply matters. Every silence matters. Every promise matters. Every gesture matters. Every inconsistency matters. The heart that has fallen deeply does not experience your actions casually. It experiences them as evidence. Evidence of hope. Evidence of rejection. Evidence of destiny. Evidence of loss. Evidence of possibility. That is why a person can fall into emotional obsession after feeling uncertain. The unknown fuels imagination. The imagination fuels attachment. The attachment fuels suffering. And suffering makes the bond feel even stronger. But let me bring this back to the deepest truth. Why would someone become crazy in love with you? Because you did not just touch their eyes, you touched their unconscious. Because you did not just speak to their ears, you spoke to the part of them that had been waiting to be awakened. Because you did not just enter their life, you entered their inner world. And once a person enters the inner world of another human being, they are never fully forgotten. Now, I want to say something that may surprise you. Sometimes the reason people are drawn so fiercely to you is because you are not easily available in the way they expect. Not emotionally cold, not cruel, not heartless, but not easy to own. You have a selfhood, you have a center. You have a life that does not revolve around proving yourself to anyone. You do not beg to be chosen. You simply exist. And that kind of energy is magnetic. Because people are used to chasing what is chaotic. They are used to being pulled into drama, inconsistency, and confusion. But when they meet someone who is grounded, they feel a shock. They feel a contrast. Their nervous system notices the difference. Their soul notices the difference. Their mind does not know what to do with the difference. And then, attraction becomes fixation. Because the human mind is often most captivated by what it cannot easily categorize. If you are too available, people may overlook you. If you are too needy, they may feel pressure. But if you are balanced, calm, and quietly powerful, they may feel something they cannot explain. And that something can become love. A deep love. A painful love. A love that lingers. Carl Jung would remind us that what we resist in ourselves, we often pursue in others. If someone has repressed tenderness, they may fall hard for someone soft. If someone has lived in chaos, they may become attached to someone stable. If someone has been invisible, they may become obsessed with someone who makes them feel seen. If someone has lived in emotional starvation, they may cling to the one person who made them feel fed. So when someone is crazy in love with you, it is possible that you became the answer to a hunger they never named. That is why your presence matters so much. That is why your energy matters so much. That is why your actions matter so much. Because people remember not just how you looked, but how they felt around you. And feelings are sticky. Feelings do not vanish because you tell them to. Feelings do not disappear because time passes. Feelings stay where they were fed. Some of the strongest bonds in the human psyche are built not by big events, but by repeated moments of emotional significance. A small kindness repeated, a small smile repeated, a small reassurance repeated, a small rupture repeated, a small absence repeated. Over time, the nervous system learns your shape. The heart memorizes your pattern. The mind constructs a story. And one day, the person realizes they are no longer merely thinking about you. They are orbiting you. That is when love becomes gravity. And gravity is hard to fight. Now listen carefully. When someone